Welcome to this episode of End of Life Conversations. I'm Reverend Wakil David Matthews.
And I'm the Reverend Mother, Ana Luisa Armendariz. In this podcast, we share people's experiences with death and dying, grief and loss, and the end of life.
Every episode, we are so honored and blessed to share stories with amazing, compassionate, and wise guests. So let's get started.
On this episode, we have the privilege of sharing a conversation with poet Steve Dahl. Steve's career has always been in the world of marketing and creativity. He's helped many clients over the years promote and grow their business with his creative writing, photography, and social media skills. Steve holds a master's degree in organization development and a master's degree in spiritual psychology.
His marketing experience took an interesting twist in 2013 when he became Director of Marketing for the Cal State University Institute for Palliative Care. There, he began to dive into the worlds of hospice and palliative care education. His task at that point was to help bring awareness of the value of hospice and palliative care to doctors, nurses, social workers, and chaplains. So good to have you with us today,
Thank you
Steve.
for coming on.
Thank you. Been looking forward to this. This is great.
Do you want to share a poem to begin?
Well, funny you should ask. I just happen to have a couple dozen. It's like a 6-hour show, right?
Right.
All right. Well, all of these are related to our topic here. I write a lot of different things, but this is one that made me think a lot. We work real hard at this one, avoiding talk of death. We act like it won't happen until our final breath. Our visit here soon will end, someday, somehow, somewhere. So show your courage, speak of death with those who really care. Talking more releases fear. Let's make it no big deal, because we can't just keep saying that death just isn't real. It's not that we're not truthful, yet there's no denying. We act as if we say the word, we'll speed up someone's dying.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, that's like our mission for the end of life conversations. That's the whole mission here.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. We should put that on our
Intros.
website.
Certainly. It's amazing how many people are afraid, old, young, in the middle, of the topic of death.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what started inspiring me. So my wife had a great experience with San Diego Hospice as director of education. And through that, I started to get more interested in this topic. And lo and behold, I ended up as director of marketing for Cal State University's Institute for Palliative Care. And my wife, Eileen, became director of education. So we worked together on this. So I know one of your regular questions is, what is your resource for your knowledge? Well, a lot of that's my wife. And just finally understanding how important this topic is and how painful it is for people to talk about something that is so inevitable. It's just crazy. And that did help me to find the inspiration to start writing about this topic.
Really wonderful. We've really enjoyed reading your poetry and hearing more about your work. Can you tell us when you first became aware of death?
You know, I looked at your notes before we got together here, and I think when I was 6 or 7 years old, it was my first recognition of the seriousness of the topic when my grandfather passed away. And I remember him being in the hospital and spending hours and nights just praying to God, just let him live another week. And as a child, I had no concept of really what was going on. And although that's not like a big thing that made a huge difference in my life, fast forward to about 15 years ago, I'm at home waiting for a friend to come over for a visit. He pounds on my front door in Carlsbad, California, just screaming, "Get out here, get out here." So Greg said, "Hey, there's a man passed out in the street. We need to help him. I don't know what to do." So I ran out there with him, and here's a large man laying on his back with a poodle sitting on his belly. And he's passed out, and I'm thinking, there's something really wrong here. So I pick up his little dog, and I start doing CPR. I start doing mouth-to-mouth CPR. I haven't done that. I do have a merit badge from, I think, 1964 on how to give first aid. But that's my knowledge, pretty limited knowledge of giving CPR. While I'm doing CPR, A crowd begins to gather. I can hear the ambulance coming. My wife ran into the wife of the gentleman I was trying to help because he's out cold, and she went down and brought him up. And as I'm pounding away, in my mind, I have this movie thing about death. The medics are going to get there. They're going to give him a shock, and he'll pop back to life, and I'll be kind of a hero. Didn't go that way at all. While I'm working away, I notice the EMTs saunter slowly up to the scene. And I find out later that his wife was saying to my wife, I hope Steve doesn't revive him. He's had 3 heart attacks. He has a DNR.
Wow.
I had no idea what a DNR was. And his wife came over later. Obviously, he didn't make it. It was a big emotional deal for me, but his wife came over later to express her gratitude of our efforts and everybody that tried to help. But it just really hit me hard about how scary this topic is and how important it is to be prepared for this time, whether it's a slow death, an instant death, or whatever it's going to be. We have to have conversations about what we expect for ourselves and from our loved ones. But it's amazing to me, doctors, physicians, chaplains, spiritual leaders do not have training in how to have this difficult conversation. So that's one of the things that's inspired me to continue to write about this.
Wow. I kind of want to, but I want to go back to this gentleman. Did his wife ever express to you how you could have known that he had a DNR? Like, you're just a good Samaritan coming down the road and you're going to try to help. Yeah. I
think probably at the time, I think she knew he was likely gone. This was like heart attack number 3. And I do remember hearing the EMTs, hey, get his doctor on the phone. Does he have a DNR? I go, what's a DNR? I just thought everything was going to turn out fine. But I was glad it turned out how it did.
Yeah.
And I think he had done a good job of preparing. He was a fairly successful business person, and his wife did tell us that. Thank God he had some planning in place, or it would have been a mess with family members and all that stuff. But there's the financial impact, there's the emotional impact, there's everything. And then you have people like me doing what I shouldn't have done, but I didn't know.
Right. And that happens actually every day. I do think that there's never enough time. It always feels like you have to hurry up and save somebody. And not everybody wants to be saved, needs to be saved, should be saved. But I do have this, I always tell my kids, if I pass out in the Target parking lot, definitely call the ambulance. But if I pass out in the mountains and it's going to take a while and lots of resources to get me out, let me go. It's okay. So yes, talking about this a lot makes it easier.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I do know I've had people tell me that they put their DNR on their chest as a tattoo, just right here, so that people could see it. Or they are, I guess you can also
a bracelet.
Get
Yep. There's actually also a necklace too, I think.
But
because when they open up your shirt to start compressing, there should be some kind of signifier there too.
And I also think, from my experience at the Institute for Palliative Care and talking to doctors about what happens when you do a chest compression on an 80-year-old, 120-pound woman, her ribs are broken. It's terrible. It's painful. It's ugly. If people really understood what reviving somebody at that stage with a serious illness and little chance of recovery, they would say, no, I don't want that. But nobody wants to talk about that detail because, come on, Mom, don't talk about death. It might speed it up. It doesn't.
Right.
Oh,
Exactly.
Steve.
Wow.
This is fabulous talking to you. So, the question we generally ask is how death impacts the story of what you're doing. But I think you've really answered that. Death has been like the thread through all of these years of you in your job and in your poetry now. So do you care to tell us more about that?
Yeah, it was interesting one night, probably a little over a year ago when I first got on TikTok as inspiring guy. I didn't know what I was doing, didn't really know anything about it. Thought, it sounds kind of fun. My wife was always said, Steve, you keep writing poetry, but you don't ever share it with anybody. So, okay, I'll go on TikTok. It looks kind of cool. And I put something up there about, actually, I think maybe I should read you that poem. I do have it here. So I put this poem up on TikTok, and I'll read it in a second. And I'm watching it with my friends and sharing it with my neighbors, and I'm watching the count go from, oh, look, 1,000 people watch the video. Oh, 5,000 people watch it. Oh my God, 15,000 people have watched it, and we've been sitting here just having dinner. 20,000 people have watched your video, Steve. I'm going, well, maybe there is something to this TikTok. Maybe I could reach people and make them think. Shall I read the poem that did that one? Because it was really interesting to watch that.
Yes, please.
Sure.
All right. And I think a lot of the audience that responded to this were chaplains and spiritual care people. All right, here we go. This is, I know you want to cure me. I know you plan to stick me with needles and stuff, but being deathly ill can be kind of tough. I know you want to cure me and send me back home, but I don't think you get it. Just leave me alone. The treatment you're giving when ending is close has kept me from asking, hey, what matters most? I'm not all that stupid. I know it's not long before treatment fails and life will be gone. So let's not be blinded by clinical ways. I have better things to do in these precious few days. I have people to see, grandkids to chase, but I can't do a thing till I'm out of this place. The chemo you're giving is not what I need. What I need is this question, the one I'll now read. What matters most is what I want to hear. I want time with my family. Am I making this clear? Stop trying to cure me. I would, if I could, sprint from this place to my old neighborhood. I have sunsets to see and people to hug, and I know it won't happen while taking this drug. So please, ask me again. Since my time's getting close, we should both know the answer to what matters most. And it was really fun to watch the amount of comments and the amount of views. And my little ego's going, ooh, this is pretty cool. But to have people say to me, that really touched me. That really made me remember the importance of having this conversation with my mother or my father or my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what felt good. That's why I kept doing this. That's why I think it's important to have the conversations we're having. I have 2 adult children, and we've had the discussion in their 20s about what they want for end of life, what I want for end of life, what our family thinks about for end of life. And we just got to keep getting the word out.
Truth.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. That's great. Yeah, you're just hitting it right on the head, right? Just
Yes.
exactly what we're doing here. Yeah, I love that you've had that conversation with your kids. So have I. So is Ana Luisa. And a lot of the people we were interviewing, of course, are doing this. But again, it's not a common thing. And so that's our hope, is that it will become common and that we can promote that normality, that normal.
One of the things as director of marketing for the Institute for Palliative Care that I was thrown into immediately was interviewing people who were facing imminent death. And I did these for promotional purposes to try to get the word out about the importance of palliative care in that particular case. That wasn't even a hospice topic at that point. What we ended up doing is I spoke with a reverend who was dying of breast cancer, very spiritual, very connected, very unafraid from what she shared with me about end of life. And it was a fascinating conversation because her whole thing was, my God, Steve, I am so curious about what's on the other side. What's going to happen? I've been talking my entire life about what happens after death. Now I get to see what happens. And I'm sure a lot of people go, I don't know if I'm that curious.
Oh, God, I am.
But it was inevitable, and she knew that. And what was really cool is that video became part of the curriculum of Cal State University in the nursing program. And I got to be a part of that. That was just a neat thing to see, where you had that conversation, and through that conversation and the recording, we were able to touch the lives of future healthcare providers. Because this is not a comfortable topic for anybody who's trained in healthcare. And healthcare, I'm trained to make you feel better, to get better, to walk out of this hospital. If you die, I'm a failure in most settings. So that's why doctors have difficulty with this.
We had a similar conversation with a veterinarian who said that, of course, it is trained the same way, right? But she said that now there is training in veterinary schools about grief counseling and about the end-of-life counseling. So people are beginning to know that this is important. And I think this is so great that your life led you to be able to share your gifts this way.
I think the other thing is recently getting close to retirement, talking to people about what they have financially for the golden years of their life, but what planning they've done or not done around the end of life issues. I am so disheartened by people I know and love who are smart, capable in so many ways, but they keep putting this off.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's going to leave a mess
Right.
for somebody if there's a little surprise and they're gone a minute too soon.
Mm-hmm.
Both of us, Ana Luisa and I, are teaching classes on how to prepare and making your advanced care directives, etc. So, because again, just like you say, this is so important and such a gift you can give to those who have to deal with.
Well, the aftermath, right? You know, just because what I've been going through in my work life right now for the last few days, it is interesting. And I don't have an answer to this, but Steve, why do you think people choose not to talk about this, or specifically about the aftercare that those who are left behind or those who continue to live in this world need to take care of, right? Like all the financials and the house. Like, why do people choose not to take care of that, do you think? What's the fear?
I think there is that fear that it's going to speed things up or it's going to create something, because what I bring about, some people may think that's negative thinking. It's not negative thinking. It's just timing. I wish I knew. I was always told, don't talk about religion, don't talk about money at the table when you have guests over. But, and especially don't talk about death. Don't be the Debbie Downer of the party.
Right.
I really don't know. I know our healthcare professionals should have a higher responsibility, a greater responsibility to make us talk about these things, but it's painful for them too. You have family members who are going to think this is a terrible conversation when dad's in there dying and you're talking about end of life. Oh, we can't give up yet. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
It's also
starting younger, I think, is a big part of it.
Starting to talk about it younger.
I think we should be talking about this in high school, probably sooner.
Well, actually, I think in a lot of families, it starts when kids have pets and pets die, right? And so, generally, a lot of parents have told me, like, I don't know what to say, like, because kids are curious, like, what's happening to their body, what's happening. Will I, like, if they're religious, like, will I see them in heaven? And when people start shutting that down, it also creates that kind of that wall that kids will continue to grow into, right? And so I think you're right. I think starting the conversation, like being honest since the get-go, there's no point in hiding. I homeschooled my kids and we talk about like the plants dying and the trees dying and like it was just all part of the cycle of life. And so that was a very natural way to talk about this, right? So
we had a difficult one when my son's hamster died.
Yeah.
We put him in a shoebox. We had a little funeral service in the backyard, buried him. He's like 8 years old. Okay, great. End of story. We put a little cross up there. We thought everybody's happy. 2 weeks later, he comes in the house and looks at me and my wife, Eileen. He says, "You guys lied to me." "What?" "You lied. You said my hamster was going to heaven. I just dug him up. He's still there."
Oh, no.
Ouch.
Yeah, you're right.
Dad.
Let's have the conversation.
All right. So did he go to heaven or not?
There you go.
No, he wasn't that good of a hamster. I'm not sure he made it.
He went to some electrical wires.
Yeah, I think a little too much.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, that's how it was just, it's a really great place for me to think about. Like, let's start younger.
I think also when we talk about the feeding tubes and what happens at the hospital and the torturous end of life. I had the experience not long ago with a good friend of mine, and I knew his mom as well, and she was getting ready to pass. I'm in the hospital with him, and we're sitting there. She'd been comatose for probably 3 days, and the nurse comes in and does something, and I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm adjusting the feeding tube."
Oh, no.
And then she left. So I said to my friend, who was just distraught over all this, I said, "Why is there a feeding tube when she's gone? She knows she's gone. We all know she's gone. Yeah. She wants to be gone. Isn't it time to let go of everything?" But he couldn't do it. I mean, being that advocate, I had to pull up whatever strength or hide my embarrassment about that topic and just say it to him. Some of us have to be honest about this topic. The amount of money that we spend on healthcare at end of life is totally disproportionate. We spend so much money keeping people alive the last 2 weeks, and yet we don't start hospice soon enough. Hospice typically is 3 or 4 days if it's even called in. It should go on for much longer than that if it's going to actually make a difference to people. Again, that's a shift of thinking for the healthcare professional as well as the rest of us, just having an awareness of this.
Exactly. Yeah. And having people like yourself and other advocates available. And that's, again, that's part of that planning process you can do, is make sure you have somebody you know who knows your wishes and can be there and trust and be your advocate, your health advocate. But it's something that has to be done ahead of time. You can't do it when you're on the in the hospital with the tubes. Right. You're not going to make those decisions. You're not going to call for people. So yeah, and if chaplains or nurses and doctors have this kind of training and kind of understanding, then they can at least be that advocate for people.
Yeah,
but if there's nobody else
that's also really difficult too, though, Akil, because chaplains really can't do that. They're there to support spiritual processes. And I did get a chance to talk to a young doctor. This is like 10 years ago when I had started this path. And she said, we need not a nurse, not a doctor, not a chaplain, but somebody else to always be in these situations. So the doctors come in and say, there's been a fatal crash and this is what we can do to keep them alive. They're not going to tell you the statistics of how it's going to turn out in the end, because partly they don't know, but they do have thoughts about it. The chaplain's going to come in and support spiritually. But this doctor was saying to me, but that kid is bleeding out. There is no point in doing anything, but the doctors won't say it. The chaplain won't say it. She's like, I don't know who needs to, but somebody needs to be like, there are choices here. And these are the choices. And all of them are honorable and good. This isn't the only way to go, So, yeah, I don't know what that means for us, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's people in the hospitals who are going to be broaching the subject. So, Steve, thank you for being a friend, a true friend.
One of the things we did at the Institute for Palliative Care is we got a grant to teach spiritual care providers about end of life. And so we paid for different ministers, priests, rabbis, etc., to do ride-alongs with a hospice nurse and a hospice doctor in San Diego. And it was tough. They had a tough time going through that whole process, because I think traditionally, especially the Catholic faith, the priest comes in, gives final rites or does a few whatever, and scoots. He's not there for the trauma or for the grieving process, and that grieving process can take as long as it's going to take. But we have to educate our spiritual care providers as well. Chaplaincy Innovation Lab is one of my clients. I do a lot of marketing work with them, and they continually have programs where they're interviewing people in their webinars about end of life and so forth. Maybe you guys have seen some of them, but it still amazes me how even the spiritual care community kind of has the wide-eyed deer in the headlight look when this topic comes up, and they have to have a deep conversation with a survivor if somebody's ready to go. So we had a lot of work to do, no doubt about it. But I have more poems. Wakil, you should read one of my poems. I never get to hear anybody else read one of my poems.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. The one before that one was
do the one more treatment.
Let's do this one. One more treatment. Intensive cares are nasty. Feeding tubes are bad. When improvement isn't likely, we all agree it's sad. But life is still worth living if it's just another day when we spend our time forgiving and we talk and laugh and play. Do you want to have a party? Watch a sunset by the sea? Do you want to be with loved ones? Go to sleep beneath a tree? Or would you rather one more treatment? Give it everything you've got. Be the fighter you are known as, and give this one more shot. There are no easy answers. There's a quality to select. There's a time for taking options. There's a time when we reflect. But there's also time for planning, telling others how you'll go. If you keep things a secret, how's a loved one supposed to know? There's a circle we're all living. From its grip, there's no release. And the sooner we accept it, the sooner we'll find peace.
Awesome. So I just want to say it's like a Dr. Seuss. It's like, oh, the places you'll go. Do you ever hear that? Some people say it's very Dr. Seuss.
Gee, do you think I was influenced by that one? Yes.
And you know what I love about that is that every sentence is succinct and you're just telling it like it is. And I think that has a way to give more people access to like thinking about this in a very lilting and delightful way, so I love that.
You know what else I was trying to say in this one is that I need the three of us sitting here, we need to reserve our judgment about for people that don't do the planning or can't make the decision. Because some may say, it's my personality. I will fight tooth and nail no matter what. That's just who I am. And I, as an observer, need to honor his wishes. But the key is it's his wishes, not mine, not my brother, not his son, daughter, whatever. And either way is okay. But having that conversation will make it more palatable for everybody involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Being with what is. That was in a theme in our last interview.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I have to just say I'm very, very impressed by your ability to have rhyme and meter. I write poetry, but it's just, it's random poetry.
It's pretty random.
That's a skill. That's a skill I really appreciate.
It's fun. It's fun to listen to.
So you're going to read one now?
I sure can. Here, let me do you have
a pick you want her to do?
Oh, do artificial efforts.
It's so funny. I have it right in front of me, so it's perfect. All right. Artificial efforts. At 92, I've had enough. My life's been blessed, some good, some tough. But time's arrived. I feel complete. I'm not giving in, nor admitting defeat. I am wise enough to admit what I know. I am dying now. I'm through with this show. Let's unhook the tubing. No electrical shocks, no artificial efforts, no more medical talks. Let's give up pretending that recovery is near. Please end this facade and let go of fear. I can't do this alone, so here's my request. Just accept where I am and let's do our best to not give up hope, nor to ever lose sight of the good life I've had, and let's do what is right. Let's stop all this madness, since together we know that we are not giving up. We are just letting go.
What fun. This is maybe our most fun.
I agree. So, Steve, I have an idea for you.
Okay.
I think you should hire my daughter to illustrate your book of collected poems. And then we make it available for families to read to children, because this is what kids want. This is what families need. This is what we want to start generating a sweetness around this conversation that is not like dark and monstery and scary. So I think
it sounds like a great idea.
I love it. I do too. I'm so excited. I would totally get behind this.
All right. We'll talk for sure.
Right.
Coffee soon.
Well, let's see. Should we go back and see if we have some more questions we'd like to get answered here?
Well, I'm curious about, is there anything that frightens you about the end of life?
I think about that every time I hear about, hey, this guy just died. He was your age, Steve, and he's on the news and he's gone. He didn't know it was coming, or maybe he did. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with the possible pain or inconvenience, but you know what really frightens me most is the incompletes. The incomplete book, the incomplete relationship where I should have said I'm sorry, the incomplete time with my grandkids on the horizon, incomplete vacation trip to Machu Picchu with my lovely wife. Those things that I want to do, that would piss me off. It's like, dang it, Steve, you've been working so much your entire life, and all of a sudden you're gone. I'd be pissed if it happened tomorrow. for that reason.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
You can't put this stuff off forever.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome.
There's that quote no one ever says in their deathbed, I wish I had worked harder.
Right.
Or spent more time at work. Right?
No, believe me, especially after working at the Institute for Palliative Care, starting to see all the horrific stories of the way people go so painfully and how much people have to suffer after that because of poor planning or just the denial that I'm going to live forever. There's no proof I'm not.
Right.
Could be the first.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of things do you do in your life to support yourself, to continue to do this work?
I'm in a writing group, so every Friday, and I found that I feel a lot more inspired when I'm under that pressure to do something versus just, hey, sit down and write something. So my writing group, we meet every Friday morning at 8:00. It's a Zoom call, and somebody presents, here's a topic, a word, a phrase, and then write. It's not about poetry, it's just about writing. And what's really cool about this group is it pushes me to really invest myself, to get more out of myself in my writing, because everybody in that group is very different, but the writing is all beautiful. And one of the rules of this group is there's no comments other than thank you, clap, 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 wave your hands, not you should have done this, or what if you did this, or hey, I really like that, or I like your other one better. No judgment. So all of us feel totally inspired to open our hearts. And it's interesting. It's like a therapy session. Everybody's in there spilling the guts. Of course, me, I'm always pretty much a smart ass making fun of something or myself or some issue. But I do feel I get really good poetry when I have that kind of pressure. So I have piles of notebooks, and I've experimented with, am I more creative with the keyboard or with my pen and paper? I used to think the keyboard because I can type really fast. No, there's a different message that comes through with the physical feeling of that pen and that paper. So it's kind of interesting. So that's one of the things I do. And then, meeting people like you and going to death cafes and doing our spiritual practice. And my wife and I are very much on the same page with all these topics. So that gives me inspiration all the time. And then when I do a video, I did a lot of these videos on TikTok last year. Then I kind of got too busy working. Now I'm feeling like I need to get back into there. But the hardest thing about creative work for a lot of people, I think, is setting aside other people's potential judgments. For example, my one on gun violence that I have on TikTok, 175,000 people watched it right away. And the comments were, Steve, you're a genius. You should run for president. Or you're an asshole. You better get out of here because I'm coming to your house tonight.
Yikes.
All of that was so interesting. I actually think I should put that in a book to show the responses that people give. I think the best one was somebody said, you look like a middle-aged Joe Biden. I said, thank you for calling me middle-aged. I wish I was.
It is.
Oh, that's so great.
I resemble that compliment.
Yep, that's me.
Oh, that's great. So, Steve, what do you wish we'd asked you?
Where can I buy your book?
Where can I buy your book?
Haven't written it yet.
Let's get on it. I'm in there. I'm on.
I'm working on it. Yeah, if I can get done with this podcast, I'll get back to work on that book.
Yeah, definitely keep us informed. This podcast probably won't air till end of summer or so anyway. So at that point, if the book's published, just keep us informed and we'll have that in the podcast notes for sure.
I've got a few steps to go, but you could mention Inspiring Guy on TikTok. One word, Inspiring Guy, if people want to look up some like
absolutely.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Absolutely do that. Sure.
Ooh, should we end with another poem?
We should, yeah.
Do we have time?
Yeah, definitely. We do have time. So do you have one you'd like us?
I am kind of a self-serving guy, aren't I?
Perfect. I love it. That's why you're here.
All right. I thought this one was a good ending one. All right, here you go. What if you got a memo to write down the date of which you will die as you fulfill your fate? What if you knew of this date you must save, and you give a goodbye with one final wave? Just save the date, put it there on your phone, but the small print below says you're going alone. Would you go to the beaches? Would you hug a good friend? If you knew exact timing of which this will end, would you try to be kinder? Would you work a bit less? Would you forgive another before leaving this mess? Would you take life for granted? Would you eat that bad food? Would you ask for forgiveness? Would you quit being rude? Would you still smoke tobacco? Would you watch stupid shows? Would you call up your mother? Would you bring her a rose? So you might do some thinking, and I know it's not great, but the memo's been sent, and you must save the date.
So cool.
What a perfect way to end. Yeah, really appreciate that. And all of your work. There's still some more that we didn't get to, but I know you've got hundreds more. So I definitely recommend to everyone to go check that out on TikTok. And actually, this inspired me that we need to get on TikTok on Louisa.
I know. We talked about this when we started.
Let me know. I'll be glad to help.
All right. I'll reach out to you because I do need help.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you again so much. It's been a pleasure and really a lot of fun. And
you're such a delight.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Keep doing your good work. Get the word out there. It's really, really important.
Thanks so much for joining us on the End of Life Conversations. We appreciate you and look forward to sharing our stories. Thanks to my daughter Lucero and Nico Rush, who have cheerfully assisted us as our editors and tech support. Additional resources, transcript of this episode, and links to our social media will be in the podcast notes.
Yeah, thank you so much. And please subscribe, tell your friends, follow us on social media, and consider supporting us through Patreon. We want to acknowledge that the music we are using was composed and produced by Charles Heastand.